The darkness tasted of rust and old fear. Aerys Targaryen lay on the dank stone, his cheek pressed to the floor of the Duskendale cell, and listened to his own ragged breathing. The damp had soaked him through. His hands, once scented with myrrh and lemon oil, stank of mildew and his own shit. His beard, once perfumed and combed with gold, hung in filthy clumps. His fingernails were broken crescents packed with stone dust and blood, and his hair, his glorious silver hair, was matted like a madman's. The king of the Undulls, the Roiner, and the first men shuttered his eyes against the darkness and remembered fire. Summerhall ablaze, the sky the color of molten bronze. His grandfather's screams drowned in the roar of burning wood and collapsing stone, the stink of roasted flesh. His father, Aerys, on his knees in the wet grass, his hands blackened where he had tried to pull Prince Duncan from the flames. Riella keening beside him. Little Aerys clinging to his mother's skirts and sobbing until his throat felt flayed. The memory had visited him often over the years, a specter of heat and shame. But here in the wet black of Duskendale, it came sharper, closer, as if the fire were not 30 years gone but licking at his toes. He could feel the heat on his face, hear the shriek of the burning castle timber, see the pale flower-sack faces of the dead. Only this time, the fire was not yellow and red. It was pale blue. In the depths of the vision, the flames burned colorless as hoarfrost, and everything they touched turned not to ash but to glass and frozen shadow. Men burned without smoke, without sound, erasing like chalk washed from slate. Above, a sky of unnatural cold split with cracks of white light, and something moved behind it, a shape too large to be seen. He heard a whisper, not in his ears but in his bones. Prince. The word rattled his ribs. He curled tighter on the stone, teeth chattering though the air was close and unmoving. Prince that was promised. He had heard that phrase before. Old Valyrian texts, dragon dreams, half-mad Septon Barths and moonstruck Magi in the flea-bottom alleys. Always about someone else. Aegon the Conqueror, some said. Baelor the Blessed. Even his bright, solemn father, Aerys. Never Aerys. His throat worked. Who speaks? Came out a cracked whisper. The rats in the corners went silent. The drip of water paused, as though the cell itself were listening. The darkness pressed closer. A sound like ice grinding against stone rumbled somewhere beyond the walls. The vision shifted. He stood no longer in Summerhall's burning ruins, but upon a wall of black ice taller than any castle. Cold wind knifed through his torn clothes. Snow whipped sideways, stinging his face. Below, in a pale wasteland stretching to the horizon, shapes moved. Small, black, clustered things. Men, perhaps, or ants. Beyond them, the snow moved the wrong way. It rose, a great white tide rolling toward the wall. No, not snow, a host. Thousands, tens of thousands, a shapeless swarm of pale bodies, eyes burning cold blue, spears and swords of living frost in their hands. His breath fogged in front of him. Behind, a voice spoke in Valyrian, resonant and old. "Do you see, little dragon?" Aerys turned. The woman standing beside him wore his mother's face and did not. The same high Targaryen cheekbones, the same silver hair falling like poured moonlight, the same violet eyes, but older, impossibly older, and full of things Riella had never known. Her gown was black as a crow's wing, trimmed in scales that shimmered faintly with inner heat. In one hand, she held a sword that blazed white, so bright that when he tried to look at it, his eyes watered blood. "Mother?" he asked. She smiled gently, like a sculpted mask that had forgotten how to move. "We all share faces in time." Another gust of wind screamed over the wall, flinging snow into spirals. Down below, the white host kept coming. "What is that?" Aerys whispered, clutching at the frozen crenel, his fingers burning on the ice. "The darkness," the woman said. "The long night, the cold that ended kingdoms and swallowed songs. The first time we were unready. We cowered in our caves and prayed to nameless stars. We made bargains we do not speak of. We were almost wiped from the world. First time. His teeth rattled. She nodded toward the tide. Darkness falls again. The wheel turns. Men forget, but dragon blood remembers. Aerys swallowed. His tongue was thick. What has this to do with me? The sword in her hand pulsed, each flare louder and hotter than the last. It hurt to be near it, yet he could not pull away. The prince that was promised, she said. Born of smoke and salt, of grief and fire. Not once, but again and again, until the task is done. I am no prince, he said, raw. I am a king. Her eyes softened with something that might have been pity. A king is only a prince who lived long enough. The ice under his bare feet groaned, cracking. He looked down. Fissures spidered away from him through the wall, throbbing with pale blue light. The oncoming tide thundered in his bones. You would see them break your wall, she said. Freeze your rivers, swallow your children. You would burn your city to avoid their shadow, and still it would not save you. Fire against this cold is nothing, unless guided. Guided by whom? He demanded, choking on the wind. By you? Some whispering ghost with my mother's face? I am no mage. I am flesh and blood. I rule with gold and steel, not dreams. The dragon has 3 heads, she murmured. Her breath misted in patterns that lingered too long in the air, runes of old Valyria he almost recognized. One must be the flame that stands against the dark. One must be the sword. One must be the sacrifice that opens the gate. Aerys shook his head. I do not. The flame is you, Aerys of House Targaryen, she said, and now her voice was iron. You who were born in the dying fires of Summerhall. You whose cradle was set beside ashes. You who dream of burning and wake tasting cinders. You will be the fire that does not consume, if you choose it. If, his breath hitched, she stepped closer. Snow did not touch her. The blade in her hand sang, a high keening edge that made his bones hum. All prophecies are choices dressed up as chains, she said. You may choose fear. You may choose small cruelties and the petty safety of your tower. You may look south and east, to crowns and walls and old grudges, and let the cold come unopposed. You will die screaming, and your city with you. The songs will call you mad. He could smell something now beneath the cold, a faint familiar reek. Pitch, tar, charred flesh. Or, he asked, and his own voice surprised him. Less pleading than he expected. A spark in the word. Or you look north, she said simply. You gather your realm and turn its strength to the true war. You will not be loved for it. They will call you mad all the same. But you will burn the right things. He shivered. I have no dragons. What fire can I wield great enough to stop that? He flung a hand toward the oncoming white host. The fire under the world, she said. The fire in your blood. The fire in stone that only dragon blood wakes. Your grandfather failed. Your father feared. Will you? Summerhall's blue flames leapt again in his memory. Screaming. Smoke. His father's hands. Blackened claws. I am not them, Aerys said through his teeth. No, the woman's hair blew around her hard, beautiful face like silver flame. You are not. The wall shook. A booming crack split the air, and a section of it far down the line caved outward. Chunks of ice the size of keeps tumbling like toys. In the breach, the white tide flowed. Cold slammed into him, and he was back in the dark, wet cell, sprawled on his side with his heart trying to punch through his ribs. The air felt suddenly too warm, too thick. He gagged on it. The rats had fled. His fingers ached. He looked down. They were blistered, the skin reddened and peeling as if from burns. He laughed, a dry little scrape. Dreams, he told the empty air. Only dreams. But from far above, faint even through stone, he heard screaming and the clash of steel. The defiance of Duskendale had begun a week past with insults and crossbow bolts, with the death of Ser Gawain gaunt on the gatehouse and the capture of the king, but now it flared into something uglier. Aerys could hear it, the thunder of armored men smashing through streets, the crackle of burning thatch. Tywin had come. For a moment, panic clawed at his throat. Tywin Lannister, the lion with no mirth, his old friend in hand, would have his pound of flesh. The Darklands had taken the king. The price would be steep. Aerys had seen Tywin's eyes when defiance rose against the crown. Cold, calculating, absolute. That should have comforted him. Tywin's fury meant his own rescue. His return to the red chair that had carved grooves into his back and legs these 16 years. His return to safety, control. Instead, another vision stubbed its toe in his mind. The wall collapsing, blue light boiling through the breach. "Look north," the whisper said. He closed his eyes. Riella's face floated there. Rhaegar's thinner, solemn, with those dark, thoughtful eyes. Their babes who had not quickened. The children lost in blood and bedclothes. How many fires had he already lit that had burned only those close to him? He thought of his tapestries in the Red Keep, the ones he had chosen himself. Aegon on Balerion, streaming shadows over the field of fire. Dragon flame turning men and horses to ash. He had always loved that one. All that power, all those enemies crushed. The fire that proved him strong. The fire that did not consume, the woman had said. What would that look like? The door to his cell exploded inward. For a heartbeat, Aerys truly believed that pale blue fire had come to claim him. But the shape in the doorway was not shadow and ice. It was steel and sweat. Ser Barristan Selmy, helm tucked under one arm, white cloak shredded and filthy. His blonde hair darkened with blood. "Your Grace," Barristan panted. "Come." Quickly, Aerys blinked up at him. "You came alone? Men are dying in the streets," Barristan said, crossing the cell in 3 strides. He hauled the king to his feet as if Aerys weighed no more than a child. "I will not let them say I stayed safe in the line while others ran the risks. Hold to me, Your Grace." Aerys' legs were half-dead things. They trembled at the effort of keeping him upright. He clung to Barristan's arm, the white steel of it sticky with other men's blood. "Lord Tywin?" He croaked as they staggered into the narrow corridor. Smoke drifted down, bringing with it the smell of burning pitch and something darker. "Lord Tywin surrounded the town before dawn," Barristan said. He meant to starve them out, but Lord Darkland's fools refused. When the first houses caught. He broke off as a man lurched from a doorway ahead, swinging a rusted sword. Barristan moved like a dancer. Steel screeched. The man folded, his chest a ruin. "When the first houses caught," Barristan continued, as if they had not paused, "panic took them. Our men are enthusiastic. I do not think many of Darkland's line will survive the day. Nor Hollard's." Aerys sucked in hot, smoky air and coughed. And the city? On fire." Barristan's jaw clenched, but contained for now. "There will be a reckoning. Not today. Today we get you out." They climbed. Aerys' knees shook. His hands burned, blisters making every rough patch of stone torture. Twice he nearly fell, the second time scrabbling his finger as brushed ice. He looked down. No ice, only stone slick with moss and water. Still, for a moment he smelled snow. They burst at last into daylight and chaos. Duskendale's inner yard was a charnel house. Bodies lay scattered in the mud. Men in Lannister crimson, in Darkland blue, in no colors at all. Smoke boiled from the hall windows. Somewhere a woman screamed, high and broken. Aerys flinched. It sounded too much like Rhaella at Summerhall. "Your Grace," someone else was shouting. "Your Grace." A knight in Lannister lion helm shoved men aside, clearing a path. Beyond him loomed the town gate, yanked wide. Outside, Aerys glimpsed tents and siege engines, the flash of sunlight on thousands of spear points, and among them, high on a black horse, a tall figure in crimson and gold. Tywin Lannister sat his horse like a carved lion, motionless amid the shifting turmoil. His armor had not a dent on it. His green eyes raked the burning town without a flicker. When he saw Aerys, he inclined his head by a hair's breadth. "Your Grace," he said when they met in the shadow of the gatehouse. His voice was calm, burrs of exhaustion rasping its edges. "You are hurt." Aerys realized he was trembling, leaning too hard on Barristan's arm. He let go and straightened, though his legs screeched protest. "Only my pride," he said, and was surprised to find it true. Bruises, burns, filth, yes, humiliation certainly, but the terror that had swallowed him in the cell felt faint now, as if his fear had burned itself out in some invisible fire. He met Tywin's gaze. For years, that gaze had irked him. For all the admiration it also stirred. Those cool green eyes saw too much. They weighed everyone and everything against a scale of useful and useless. Once, they had looked upon Aerys with loyalty and something like fondness. Of late, they had held only weariness and quiet contempt. Now, for the first time, Aerys truly saw the man behind them. Not just his hand, his boyhood companion. The one who had always made the realm run so that Aerys could shine. Tywin had marshaled a host in days, encircling Duskendale in steel and gold, willing to starve tens of thousands so that one man might be delivered. It was terrible and impressive and necessary. "Dark Lynn?" Aerys asked. "Dead," Tywin said. "His wife, their children, his cousin Dennis Hollard and all his line. The town will be put to the torch once we have taken what supplies we need. Their defiance will not be repeated." Aerys thought of fire licking through wooden beams, of children trying to scream through lungs that no longer worked. Once, the thought of such a lord-daring defiance would have stoked his anger to white heat. He would have reveled in the idea of burning them out. Proof that he was not weak, not his father, not the boy who had watched Summerhall fall. Now he remembered the wall splitting like rotten bone, and a tide of pale corpses flowing into the realm. "Their defiance," he said slowly, "has already cost them everything. The Hollards and Darklands are no more. The town is broken. Burning it to cinders will not make the realm safer, Lord Tywin. It will make it poorer." Tywin's eyes sharpened. "Your Grace, they took your person. They killed your Kingsguard. If the realm thinks such a crime can be paid for with anything less than annihilation, every petty lord with a grievance will. The realm is not a hound to be beaten into heel." Aerys snapped, then caught himself. He could hear his old tone there. Sharp, defensive, quick to lash. He tasted ash and swallowed it. He looked north, the way every map in his childhood had pointed but his life had never gone. Over the hills, beyond the Trident, past Winterfell and the Wall. "Lord Tywin," he said, quieter, "the realm is a sword we must wield. I mean to wield it in another war. I will not waste its edge here." Tywin stared at him. The noises of the burning town seemed to dim, as if the world held its breath. "Aerys." Tywin had always been the only one who dared speak his name when they were alone. He said it now without heat, only grave warning. "If you show mercy here, you will seem weak. After this insult, weakness will invite worse. You cannot afford it. The crown cannot afford it. We cannot afford to spend years putting out little fires," Aerys said. "Punish the guilty, yes. Take hostages. Tear down Darkland Stone if it pleases you. But spare the town. Put them to rebuilding, not wandering the roads as beggars and bandits. We have need of every man and bushel of grain. There is a greater storm coming." Tywin's brows knit. "What storm?" Aerys hesitated. He saw again the wall, the crack, the white tide. He heard the whisper, "Look north." If he spoke of dreams and blue fire, Tywin would think him mad, or madder than he had already begun to suspect. Pycelle would nod and mutter soothingly. The small folk would whisper. The lords would watch him with narrowed eyes and wonder when the madness of his blood had bloomed. And yet, he could not look into Tywin's level green gaze and lie. "Winter," Aerys said. "The true winter. The kind the legends still mutter of. The kind that lasted a generation. The darkness behind our little squabbles. There are things beyond the wall that would not care if Duskendale burns or stands. They will care if the granaries are full, if the forges are hot, if the men of this realm are eager to march." Tywin's lips thinned. "You speak of children's tales." "I speak," Aerys said, and his voice came out steady, of the duty of a king to look beyond his own lifetime. For a moment, they simply stared at one another. The lion and the dragon, fire banked behind both their eyes. At last, Tywin inclined his head. "As you command, your grace," he said, not yielding, not really, but accepting. "We will hold the town. We will rebuild what we must. The Darklands and Pollards are ended. Their seats go to the crown to dispose of as it will." "See it done," Aerys said. The words felt different this time. Not an indulgence, but a trust. He swayed. The world tilted. Barristan's strong hand caught his elbow. "Get his grace to his tent," Tywin said. "Summon Maester Balabar." His gaze flicked once more to Aerys' face. "Rest, your grace. The realm will need you strong in the days to come." Aerys let them lead him away. Behind him, he could feel Tywin stare like a brand between his shoulder blades, weighing this new king who spoke of mercy and winter. The maester fussed over his burns, layered his blisters with some stinking yellow salve, and tutade about infection. Aerys endured it in silence. His mind was too loud with the echo of that voice, his veins too full of remembered cold. When the tent at last emptied, Barristan dismissed, the maester sent to tend the wounded, Aerys lay on his pallet and stared at the canvas above, watching shadow and smoke twist. He should sleep. He needed it desperately. His body hurt in the dull, distant way of something that had forgotten how to stop hurting. Instead, he spoke into the relentless quiet. "If you are a dream," he said, "you will not answer. If you are not a dream, you will." Silence. He almost laughed at himself. King of Westeros, bargaining with phantoms in a borrowed tent with his hair still clogged with cell filth. Minutes slid by. The murmur of the camp seeped through the canvas. Horses snorting, men coughing, the occasional clank of armor. A horse whickered, deep and low. Then the candle by his bedside flared. Aerys' breath caught. The little flame leapt twice as high, dancing without draft. It narrowed, lengthened, shrinking to a thin white spear that burned without smoke. The air grew very still. "You called," said the voice, not aloud, not exactly their earlier exchange, but the same presence, the same dry, aching gravity. "Was it you who put me in that cell?" Aerys whispered. "Who made Darklyn insult me, made me go, made me taken, all to show me your damnable wall?" "We made the world," the presence said. "Men made their choices. You chose pride and walked into a trap. They chose fear and chained their king. Your hand chose fury and came with fire and steel. I chose nothing for any of you." "If you are some god," Aerys said, his lip curling, "you are a poor one. I am no god. I am a memory you share, little dragon. I am what your blood and your burned bones remember. I am what is left of those who first bound fire and flesh." "Valyria," he swallowed. "You are a dragon lord." The candle once more shivered, as if in a laugh. Names lose their meaning after a time. Valyria burned. The language writhes in the mouths of your maesters like a dying snake. "I am what remains of us in you." "You used my mother's face," Aerys accused. "You used it," the memory said. "We take what shape you understand." He closed his eyes. "Are there others like you?" he asked. "Once. Many. Now, fewer. You will not meet them in this life. You do not have that long." "Comforting," he muttered, but he was less afraid now. It was strange. To lie there, filthy and burned and hollowed from fear and starvation, and realize that terror had receded. Duskendale's nightmare diminished to a savage little incident on a long road he had not known he was walking. A necessary humiliation to bring him to this tent, to this voice, to this choice. The flame bent toward him. "You asked what fire you could wield," it said. "You are dragon blood. There are eggs in your keeping. Old, stone-hard, sleeping. Your line has forgotten what they are." Aerys' eyes snapped open. The eggs. For a moment he saw them, as he had at 16. 3 dull stones laid in velvet on a cushion in the Red Keep treasury, trophies of a dead age. "They do not hatch. Your grandfather tried," the voice said, foolishly. He burned men and wood and words without understanding. Fire alone is not enough. Fire must be wedded to blood, to intent, to sacrifice, to the right place at the right time. You speak of Summerhall, Aerys said, his hands clenched in the rough blanket. You were there. We were always there, where dragonfire pierced the world. Some heard us and fled. Some heard us and tried to use us. None listened. And you expect me to listen? He barked a harsh laugh. You expect me to succeed where they failed. You will either succeed, the voice said, or you will fail more gloriously. He stared at the ceiling. The thought of dragons, real dragons, scale and smoke and heat, stirred something feral in his chest. What ruler would not be tempted? Aerys had grown beneath tapestries of his ancestors in their glory, had dreamed as a boy of riding out on a beast of fire to make stubborn lords tremble. If he had had dragons before Duskendale, he might well have flown here himself and burned the town, laughing at their petty walls. If he had had dragons when he was young, he might never have looked north. Why trouble himself with pale stories when there were kingdoms to scorch? Dragons, he said slowly, against a winter that eats walls. Dragons burned bright against the cold, the presence said, like dry leaves in snow. They were not enough alone. They were younger than what comes, but they are a beginning, and their birth is a door you must open. He thought of the blade in the woman's hand, the terrible, beautiful light of it. Even dragons shrank in his mind beside that weapon, yet the image of its forging, of the sacrifice underlying it, soured his mouth. Open how? He asked. Sacrifice what? All things worth doing balance on such questions, little dragon. Your fire cannot be given without taking. Your life cannot save without costing. The price is not yet due. For now, you must live long enough to pay it. He thought of his Fath. Dead these 2 years in his bed of sickness that no maester could name. Aerys, who had feared Summerhall so deeply that he never again spoke of dragons except in a whisper. Who had looked at his son and said, once, when he thought Aerys asleep, I pray his madness is only vanity. Live long enough, Aerys echoed softly. To pay. He took a breath. He had always known, in some quiet, cowardly corner of himself, that he was not his father. It had comforted and frightened him by turns. Aerys had been slow, careful, but his care had not saved Summerhall, had not restored the dragons, had not prevented this creeping weakness in the realm. Aerys had wanted to be more, brighter, fiercer, unforgettable. Now he saw another difference. Aerys had always looked backward, to things lost. Aerys, even when drunk on his own reflection, had always looked forward, to greater splendors, to louder songs, to fires yet unlit. He would light them, but not as he had once thought. The candle flame steadied. The scent of burnt tallow filled the tent. I will look north, Aerys said. I will raise this realm for a war it has forgotten. I will seek the eggs, and I will learn what my grandfather did not. I will not be remembered as mad. No, the presence agreed. Madness is a word men give to fires that spread where they did not expect. Then I will be their madness, he said, and their salvation. He slept. This time, no blue flames chased him. When the royal party returned to King's Landing, the city cheered itself hoarse. Ravens had flown from Duskendale long before Aerys' own return. They brought stories of his capture, of Tywin's swift, merciless response, of the king's daring rescue at Ser Barristan's hand. In the taverns, the singers embroidered details, adding a dozen crossbowmen felled with a single stroke, secret tunnels, hostage bargains. The truth mattered less than the shape of it. A king humbled and saved was a king whose story might be worth following again. Aerys rode through the city's narrow streets with Riella at his side and Rhaegar just behind, the prince's dark eyes flicking back and forth, taking in the faces of the crowd. Riella's hands, gloved in pale silk, were tight on her palfrey's reins. Her smile was thin, but it was more expression than she had shown him in years. He leaned toward her as the roar of the crowd swelled at the sight of the royal banner. You see, he murmured, they are glad to have me back. She did not look at him. "They are glad to have a king back," she said softly. "Any king." Her words struck sharper than he expected. Once he would have snapped at her, reminded her who she was, who he was. Today he stared at her profile, the fine arch of her brow, the little downward curve at the corner of her mouth, worn by years of fear and childbed. "Riella," he said under the clamor, "I am sorry." She flinched as if he had struck her. "For leaving you," he added quickly. "For riding off to Duskendale like a hot-headed youth, instead of trusting my hand to deal with an insult." A self-mocking smile twisted his mouth. "I thought myself untouchable. I was wrong." Her gaze flicked to his bandaged hands and away. The wounds were not severe, but he had not hidden them. Let them see that the king had bled. "You have said such things before," she murmured, "only to change." He could not deny it. There had been tearful nights, once, after lost babes, when he had sworn to be gentle, to be better, to stop seeking solace in other beds, other pleasures. And each time, the vow had faded under the press of his own vanity and hurt. "This time is different," he said. He sounded like every man who had ever broken a promise, coming back with new excuses. He knew it. Still, the words felt truer than anything he had said in years. "The world is different," he went on, pushing past the flush of anger at himself. "There are things coming we are not ready for. I have seen them." She frowned faintly. "Seen." The word held more curiosity than scorn. "Dreams," he said, though the word felt too small. "Visions. Of winter, of something beyond winter. Of our line, Riella. Of you and me. Of Rieger, and the children he will have." At that, she stiffened. He saw the pain flicker across her face, quick and raw. He had been a fool. His tongue always ran ahead of his good sense. Talk of children, of Rieger's future brood, could only remind her of the ones she had lost, of the blood she had bled while he ranted for heirs. "I did not mean," he began. "It is all right," she said quickly, but her knuckles were white on the reins. "He is lucky, perhaps, to be able to dream of such things." "You are not barren," Aerys said sharply, more to spite fate than her. "You have borne a prince." "The fault lies with me, if fault there is," the Maester said. "The Maester said many things," she cut in, "some of them cruel. I do not care for any more of his wisdom." Her jaw tightened. "Or yours." The crowds roared again as the royal train passed under the shadow of the Red Keep. Gold cloaks held the lines. Above, the great walls cast a long shadow. For the first time, Aerys imagined those walls half buried in snow, their stones split by frost. He wanted to reach out to touch her hand. The gulf between them gaped, wide and chill. Once, she had been his comfort, his soft place to land from the sharpness of court and expectation. Then the years and failures had turned him brittle, turned her wary, and they had become two strangers sharing a bed. He did not know how to mend that. He barely knew how to mend anything. He had ruled by whim, by charm, by fits of pique, letting Tywin smooth what he ruffled. To rule with a purpose beyond his own image would require different skills. He thought of the voice in the tent, of the wall splitting, of barren fields and empty holdfasts, of hungry eyes and colder nights, of children whose names he would never know dying in the dark because their king had chosen to burn cities instead of preparing. "I will need you," he said abruptly. Riella blinked. "You have the greatest lords in Westeros at your beck and call," she said. "You have your hand, your counsel, your Kingsguard. What need have you of me?" "Those lords will grumble and scheme," he said. "Tywin will tally costs and scowl. The council will do sums and whisper. But you see hearts. You see our people. You have lived more among them than I." He grimaced, remembering how often he had fled the city for festivals, tourneys, flatteries elsewhere while she had remained, quietly walking the steps, the charity kitchens, the nursery. "If I am to drag this realm north in chains to face the cold, someone must remind me they are people and not only armies. That is you." Her lips parted. She studied him sidelong, as if expecting the jest, the barb, the twist. None came. "So this is your new madness," she said at last. "Winter in summer, war where there is none, dragons and visions." "Yes," he said simply. "And you would have me what? Comfort you when they whisper? Smile at feasts while you talk of ghosts in the snow? I would have you tell me when I go too far," he said. "And when I do not go far enough." He hesitated. "And I would have you as my queen truly, for the first time in a long while." Her eyes shone briefly. She looked away. "We will see," she said. It was more than he deserved. He took it like water in the desert. The first raven flew north 2 days after his return. By then, he had summoned the small council, bathed until the stink of Duskendale scrubbed from his skin, and had the burns on his hands wrapped neatly in pale linen. The court had seen the scars. They had murmured appropriately. The singers had already begun crafting verses about his suffering and his deliverance. Let them. Let the tale spread. A king who had seen the inside of a cell might be a king worth fearing in a new way. Pycelle hobbled under the weight of a dozen scrolls, wheezing. Varys drifted in silk, a new addition to the council, his smile unctuous and unreadable. Stannis Baratheon, still more boy than man, sat awkwardly at the table's edge as his elder brother's puppet and proxy on the council, jaw clenched tight. Tywin's chair, by long custom, was at Aerys' right hand. They argued at first about Duskendale, about restitution and taxes, about the disbursement of confiscated lands, about whether to reward House Lannister further for its swift action. Aerys let them talk. He listened with half an ear, sifting their words, weighing their fears. Tywin argued coldly for total forfeiture. Pycelle fretted about precedent. Varys murmured about the dangers of pushing small lords into desperation. In another life, Aerys would have made the decision in a fit of pique. Side with Tywin because Tywin annoyed him, or against him because Tywin overshadowed him. Today, he watched them as if from outside his own body, his mind already halfway up a wall of ice. "We will take Darklyn and Hollard lands into the royal domain," he said when they had run down. "We will use their harvests to fortify the royal granaries. The town of Duskendale will pay fines and offer hostages, but it will not be razed. It will, however, house a permanent royal garrison, whose upkeep the crown will share with Lord Lannister, in recognition of his services." He met Tywin's eyes. "Your men will keep the peace there, Lord Tywin, not to punish, but to ensure the king's justice is seen and swift." Shock flickered, quickly masked, on Tywin's face. The others muttered among themselves. "You show a most tender heart, your grace," Varys oozed. "The small folk will sing of such mercy. They will sing more loudly if there is bread in their bellies when winter comes," Aerys said. "Which brings us to my true purpose." He leaned forward. "Pycelle," he said, "what news from the Citadel regarding the seasons?" The old maester startled. The seasons, your grace? Why, the Citadel assures me that the maester's glass candles burn clear. The long summers of recent years have been noted. The white ravens will fly in due course when the Citadel judges the season to have turned. You cannot tell me when that will be? The length of the seasons is a matter of complex. In other words, no. Aerys cut in. Then we must assume winter may come soon. Perhaps very soon. Are the royal granaries prepared? Pycelle blinked, then puffed out his chest. I can assure your grace they are in better fettle than in your father's last years. Thanks in no small part to Lord Tywin's frugality. Better than bad may still be insufficient, Aerys said. We will increase levies. All major houses will raise their own stores. The crown will coordinate. I want a detailed accounting of grain, salted meat, and roots from every lord sworn to us within the moon. Tywin frowned. Your grace, such a demand will be seen as intrusive. The lords jealously guard the contents of their larders, especially after a long summer. They will suspect some new tax. Tell them they are right, Aerys said bluntly. We will tax in grain and in coin. We will also pay when winter bites. Those who store wisely now will be repaid in favors and gold when their neighbors grow hungry. Those who do not will find themselves subject to royal convenience." Stannis shifted, eyes bright. "You mean to punish lords who do not follow your storehouse's commands when their people starve?" "I mean to punish lords who let their people starve," Aerys said. "Because hungry men make desperate choices. They turn to banditry. They follow any fool who promises them food. They open their gates to whoever knocks first, be it the king or some northern terror from the top."
Lee.
"Yes, Lord Stannis. I mean to make it unprofitable to be short-sighted." "They will call it overreach," Tywin murmured. But there was a glimmer in his eyes now, a calculating gleam that Aerys knew well. Tywin already turning the situation over, seeing the advantage for the realm for his own house. "Let them," Aerys said. "And this northern terror, your grace?" Varys inquired delicately. "Is this why you have summoned Lord Commander Corgyle to send a man from the Night's Watch?" He tilted his head. "It is most unusual to require a black brother at court. They have no part to play in the games of the South." "They may soon have the only part," Aerys said. He looked to Pycelle. "In your learning, Maester, what do you know of the Long Night?" Pycelle adjusted his maester's chain, its links clinking. "Old stories," he said. "Legends passed down from before the Undulls came. A darkness that fell for a generation, it is said, when creatures of ice and death swept down upon the realms of men. The first men beat them back with the help of the children of the forest, using strange magics long since lost. It is said the wall was raised then to keep them out. But that was 8,000 years ago, if the tales be true. Nothing has threatened the wall since. The Night's Watch is," he coughed delicately, "a shadow of what it was, a place for second sons and criminals." "And if the tales are not tales?" Aerys asked quietly. "If the darkness returns?" Pycelle's jowls quivered. "Your grace is wise to be cautious, but truly, such things are for storytellers, and wise men prepare for storms they have not yet seen," Aerys said. "We will hear from the Watch. We will know the state of the wall. We will remind the lords that they are sworn to aid it." He let his gaze sweep the room. "We are done squabbling over chairs, my lords. The board is larger than the 7 kingdoms, and winter is not patient." The council dissolved in mutters and glances. Half thought him paranoid. He could see it in their sidelong looks. A few, like Stannis, seemed grimly intrigued. Tywin said little, which was more eloquent than speech. When they filed out, Aerys remained, fingers drumming lightly on the table. "Varys," he said without looking up. "Stay." The spymaster paused in the doorway. "Your grace." When they were alone, Aerys rose and crossed to the high window. King's Landing spooled out below, its teeming alleys, its muddled roofs, its ribbon of brown water glinting under the sun. Beyond it, the sea. Beyond that, Essos, and beyond that, memory. "You are not from here," Aerys said. It was not a question. Varys chuckled softly. "No, your grace. I am but a humble servant of the realm, plucked from the exotic climes of Lys as a youth." "You were plucked for your ears and your whispers," Aerys said. "Not your humility. I would have you turn those ears north and east." "East, I understand," Varys said. "My little birds sing most sweetly across the narrow sea. But north," he spread pale hands. "There is little to hear beyond the neck but the howling of wolves." "Then you must teach your birds to love the cold," Aerys said. "I want to know everything that moves near the wall. Every wildling rumor, every whiff of strangeness. Men going missing, blue lights in the woods, a chill that will not leave the bones, old wives' tales, children's fright stories. I want them." Varys' lids lowered, his gaze sharpened. "This is more than a passing fancy," he said. "Your grace speaks of northern terrors as if he has seen them." "I have seen enough," Aerys said. "Do you doubt that strange things move in the world?" Varys' smile thinned. "I have seen enough strange things myself, your grace, to make me doubt everything." "Some call that wisdom," Some call it cowardice. Call it what you like, Aerys said. But listen to me. There comes a time when a king must see more than what is immediately profitable. I do not ask you for loyalty to me. I ask for loyalty to this realm and to the living people who fill it. If the cold comes as I fear, our little games will seem very small indeed. Varys regarded him closely for a long moment. At least games can be won, he said at last. Winter is less accommodating. Then we will cheat, Aerys said. With every whisper and lie we can muster. Varys bowed. As your grace commands, my birds will find what they can in the north and the east. Valyria, Aerys said softly. Even Varys' composure faltered at that. Your grace jests. I do not, Aerys said. There are ruins. There are traders who skirt the smoking sea. There are tales of things that live among the ashes. I want them. Your grace cannot intend. I intend to wake dragons, Aerys said. The words fell like stones into a still pond. Not as my grandfather did, not with blind fire, but with knowledge. Whatever scraps remain of Valyria's lore, I would have. Scrolls, trinkets, half-understood charms. Men who call themselves sorcerers. Bring them to me. Such dabbling is dangerous, Varys said quietly. The fires of the freehold burned hot enough to consume the world. Some would say they did. Your grandfather died for lesser curiosities. I am not my grandfather, Aerys said. Nor my father. I will not blunder blindly. I will treat with this fire as a man treats with a temperamental courser, not as a child poking a lion. His lips curved. And you, master of whisperers, will ensure that if it tries to bite, it bites someone we can spare first. Varys' smile returned, thin and precise. Of course, your grace. Rhaegar found him that night in the Hall of Dragons. The red keeps under halls were cool and shadowed, their vaulted ceilings echoing with the mutter of guards and the drip of water. The Hall of Dragons was long and narrow, its walls lined with niches where dragon skulls had once been displayed. Those SK. Yules had been moved to the cellars or some vault. Even Aerys was not quite sure where. He had not liked the way their empty eyes watched him on his throne. Tonight, the niches were empty but for dust and cobwebs. Aerys stood alone at the far end of the hall, a single candelabrum burning beside him, its light turning the stone dark gold. He ran his fingers over a groove where some long ago dragon's jaw had rested. In his mind, he tried to imagine the skull that had once sat there. The weight of it, the teeth, the way it might have looked when wreathed in flame. You did not summon me, Rhaegar said quietly behind him. Aerys turned. His son stood in the doorway, framed by shadow. Rhaegar had been a solemn child, always with his nose in a book or his fingers on a harp. As a boy, he had been fragile, prone to fevers. Somewhere in the last few years, he had stretched, the awkwardness of limbs smoothing into a kind of austere grace. There was steel under the slenderness now, earned on training yards and small battlefield skirmishes. He wore no crown, no jewels, only a simple tunic of dark blue, his silver hair pulled back loosely. In the hall's dimness, his eyes were almost black. You told me once, Father, Rhaegar said, that whenever you walked here, you felt the eyes of our ancestors on you. Aerys smiled crookedly. I did, and I moved their bones for it. Now they haunt me from cupboards instead. He gestured at the empty niches. Do you feel them? Rhaegar hesitated. When I was younger, I did. I used to creep down here at night, hoping for a sign, a whisper, some hint that I had not failed them simply by being born when the dragons were gone. Something twisted in Aerys' chest. You have never failed them, he said. Rhaegar's mouth tipped in a half-smile. You used to say that about yourself. It was less true, Aerys said lightly. You have always carried their weight better than I. He motioned. Come, stand with me. Rhaegar crossed the hall, his footsteps soft. He stopped beside his father, looking at the empty niches. They say that when the last dragon died, he said, it was no bigger than a house cat. So small a death for so great a lineage, Aerys murmured. Rhaegar's gaze moved to his father's wrapped hands. "You were hurt," he said. "In Duskendale." "Lightly," Aerys said. "You should see the other fellow." The joke fell flat. Rhaegar only watched him, measuring. "I had another of my dreams," Rhaegar said abruptly. Aerys' spine prickled. "Tell me." When Rhaegar had been a boy, he had come to his mother's chambers one morning with eyes red from weeping. He had dreamed of a woman dying in childbirth on a bed stained with blood and salt tears, and a babe with dragon's eyes. Rhaella had soothed him, but Aerys had listened from the doorway, unseen. Later, the boy had gravitated to histories of prophecy, of Azor Ahai and the prince that was promised. He had begun to believe quietly that he was that prince, that great things would be required of him. Aerys had scoffed then when he thought of it at all. Now he listened as if his son's words were the ticking of some unseen clock. "There was snow," Rhaegar said. "I stood in it barefoot. It burned." His hands flexed at his sides, remembering. The sky was black, no stars, no moon, only cold. I could not see more than a few feet in any direction, but I knew I was on a hill, and below men were fighting. Our men, Southron banners. I could hear them shouting. I could hear something else shouting back, but it was not in any tongue I knew. Aerys' breath came shallow. "And then, a sword," Rhaegar said. His eyes went distant, like in the tales, burning, held out to me, a woman's hand on the hilt, but her face. I could not see it, only light. She offered it to me, and when I reached for it, my hand burned. He looked at Aerys' bandages. I woke with blisters. Maester Balabar says I must have slept on my hand. I do not think so. Nor do I, Aerys said. I have always thought when I dreamed such things that they meant something, Rhaegar said. That I was meant for some destiny beyond the courtly dances and tourneys. I studied the old texts, the prince that was promised, born amidst salt and smoke, dragons awakening from stone. He swallowed. I thought that prince was me. Once I was sure of it. Aerys' throat worked. And now, Rhaegar's gaze was steady. Now I am less sure. Because of my dreams, Aerys said. Because you speak of winter, Rhaegar said. Because you look north instead of inward. Because the realm calls you changed. And because when I look at you, I see a man who has seen something I have not. I do not know whether you are the prince that was promised. I only know that the world feels tilted. Aerys stared at his son, at the man he had become in the cracks of his father's indulgence and neglect. He saw not a rival, not a shadow, but a second head of the dragon. I have been selfish, he said. I have wasted time on empty pleasures and petty grudges. I have let Tywin rule in my stead while I played the king. His lips twisted. Duskendale showed me the inside of my own arrogance. Rhaegar said nothing. It was answer enough. A dream came to me, Aerys continued, more than a dream. Of the wall, of things beyond it with eyes like blue embers. He recounted, haltingly, what he had seen. The crack of ice, the white tide, the woman with Rhaella's face. He spoke of the voice in the tent, of fire in stone, of eggs. Rhaegar listened like a man on the edge of some great drop. And you believe this? He said when his father fell silent, not mocking, simply trying to fix the shape of it in his mind. I do, Aerys said, with a certainty that frightens me. I believe we are meant to stand against that cold. You, me, those who come after. 3 heads, Rhaegar whispered. Aerys looked at him sharply. You know that phrase? In the scrolls, Rhaegar said. Old Valyrian prophecies. The dragon must have 3 heads. I thought it meant, it does not matter what I thought. You hear voices without names. I see swords in snow. Perhaps we are both mad. Or perhaps we are both being told the same thing with different words. He shifted, the candlelight catching on the planes of his face. Why did you call me here, father? He asked. To tell me this? To unburden yourself? Or because you mean to ask something of me? I always mean to ask something, Aerys said wryly. This time, what I ask is heavier. He took a breath. I need you to go north. Rieger's brows lifted. North, beyond the neck, Aerys said. Past Winterfell, to the wall, to see it with your own eyes, to speak with the Lord Commander, to ride with the Night's Watch if they will have you, to look for signs of what I have seen. Bring me truth, not tales. Why me? Rieger asked. Because you believe, Aerys said simply, and because the prince that was promised, whoever he is, must know the battleground. A flicker of humor. And because if I go, Tywin might well have a fit and die, and the realm will collapse under the weight of his disapproval. Rieger's mouth quirked. He does disapprove very loudly. He has earned the right, Aerys said, but he thinks of gold and steel first. You think of songs and souls. I will need both. He reached out then and laid a hand on his son's shoulder. The contact felt strange. Rarely had he touched Rieger except in public, for show. You will go north as my eyes and my fire. In my name, take a strong escort. Take Ser Arthur. Take men you trust. But keep your mind open. Listen to the old tales as if they were news. Rieger was very still. At the wall, he said slowly. I dreamed once of a voice calling my name. I thought it was the wind. Perhaps it was waiting. You will find out, Aerys said. And while you ride, I will begin the work here. The storehouses, the ravens, the other matters. The eggs, Rieger said. His gaze drifted up to the empty niches. Do you truly think they can be woken? I think they must be, Aerys said. I do not know if I will live to see them hatch. Perhaps that is to be your task or your children's. He squeezed Rieger's shoulder. But I know this, we will not cower before this winter. We will not be caught like small folk in a snowstorm, shivering and hoping. We are dragons. We are meant to burn bright. Rieger looked at his father's hand on his shoulder, then up into Aerys' face, searching. Then I will go, he said. I will see your wall. I will listen for your voices, and I will return whatever I find. He hesitated. And if I am the prince that was promised? He asked quietly. If the sword in my dream was meant for me, then you will take it, Aerys said. And I will stand beside you as your father and your fire. The dragon has 3 heads. Rieger, it does not matter which of us bears which name in the songs, so long as the cold breaks. For the first time in a long while, Rieger smiled fully. That, he said, is a song I would like to hear. The wall loomed against the sky like a frozen god. Rieger had seen castles of every kind. Storm's End crouched over its sea, the Eyrie perched on its impossible mountain, the high tower thrusting skyward like a stone spear. None had prepared him for the raw height and breadth of that blue-white cliff stretching away into the Hazeline distance. Even from a mile off, it dwarfed them. As they rode closer, its presence grew so total that it seemed to swallow the world. The sky shrank to a narrow band above. The air grew sharper, biting exposed skin, sneaking through wool and leather. Everything smelled of cold, old cold, deep and bitter, layered over years. Rieger drew his cloak tighter. The gold and crimson of House Targaryen were mostly hidden beneath thick gray wool and black fur, like any northern lordling. Only the rubies at his throat flashed when the light struck. Ser Arthur Dayne rode at his right hand, the pale blade dawn on his back, its scabbard wrapped to protect it from the damp. Behind them, a score of chosen men, some of the Kingsguard, some of Rieger's own household. Their breath smoked the air. Impressive, Arthur said mildly. Rieger laughed, a little breath of mist. You sound underwhelmed. I grew up looking at the Red Mountains, Arthur said. I have seen peaks as high, but never a wall of them. Rieger looked again, letting the sheer unnaturalness of it sink in. The wall was not a product of patient weathering or slow eruption. It was a made thing. Men and something else had raised it. We should never have forgotten that it was built, he said. Things that are built can be broken. Arthur's gaze flicked to him. You think this will break? My father does, Rieger said. The words no longer carried the old edge of cynicism. I am here to see if he is right. They rode the last stretch in thoughtful silence. Castle Black was less impressive. It sprawled low against the wall's foot like a clutch of black barnacles on a whale. Wooden palisades, stone keeps that seemed half-buried, smoke curling from crooked chimneys. A great gate, only one of 19 along the wall's length, gaped like a dark mouth. Black robes moved within. Men looked up as the party approached, their faces pale in the cold. By the time they passed through the gate, ravens had flown from the maester's rookery, bearing word that the prince had arrived. The yards within buzzed with awkward activity as men tried to look ceremonial despite the cold. Someone had even swept frost from a patch of ground, creating a makeshift place of honor. The Lord Commander waited by the foot of the Lord Steward's tower, a tall man gone thin at the edges, his hair more gray than black. He wore the blacks of his order, his cloak edged with frost. "Your Highness," he said, bowing stiffly as Rhaegar dismounted. "I am Dennis Corgyle, Lord Commander of the Night's Watch." Rhaegar returned the bow with respect. "My father sends his greetings and his gratitude," he said, "and his concern." "We are honored to receive both," Corgyle said. His gaze flicked over Rhaegar's party, measuring. "If the king is concerned, the wall listens." Rhaegar smiled faintly. "The wall seems to listen to little but the wind." He nodded toward the looming ice. "It hums." Corgyle's mouth twitched. "Some men say they hear things in it," he admitted. "It makes others mad. I try not to spend overmuch time in its shadow." He beckoned. "Come, we will warm you, such as we can." Warmth at the wall was more of a suggestion than a reality. The Lord Commander's solar held a small fire, burning sullenly in the hearth. Rhaegar took bodily comfort where he could. Fingers extended toward the flames, cloak close around his shoulders, and listened. The men of the watch were thin. Their numbers were fewer than even his father's pessimism had suggested. Corgyle spoke frankly, without self-pity or embellishment. The watch had dwindled from a proud brotherhood to a dumping ground. They had barely 1,000 men along 300 miles of wall. They manned only 3 castles. Their armory contained more rust than steel. "And beyond?" Rhaegar asked. "What moves in the haunted forest?" "Wildlings," said a grizzled ranger with a scar running from brow to chin. Ser Alliser Thorne, if Rhaegar recalled correctly. "Clans small and large. They raid. We chase them. The game has not changed in years." "No others?" Rhaegar pressed. "No White Walkers? Cold spirits? Dead things that walk?" The men exchanged glances. A few smirked. "My Lord Prince," Alliser said with strained patience, "will no doubt find many stories here to chill the blood. The old men say much to pass the dark. But in the 20 years I have given to this wall, I have seen raiders and I have seen snow. The rest is smoke." "Yet even smoke suggests fire," Rhaegar said. Corgyle cleared his throat. "There have been rumors," he allowed. "Not from rangers I trust, mind, but from wildlings, from half-mad men stumbling south. They speak of shadows in the woods, of things that leave no tracks, of cold that bites deeper than it should. We have lost 3 small parties in the last 2 years. We found their bones stripped clean with no sign of beasts. I do not like it." Alliser snorted softly but did not contradict. Rhaegar leaned forward. "I would speak with those men. You would do better to ride south before the snows deepen, Prince?" Alliser muttered under his breath, but Corgyle nodded. "As you wish," the Lord Commander said. "I would not gainsay a Targaryen his curiosity. We are grateful enough that your father remembers we exist." Rhaegar studied the older man's lined face. There was weariness there, yes, and strain, but also a glint of something else. Resentment, perhaps, or hunger. "My father intends to do more than remember," Rhaegar said. "He intends to send men, food, steel, to rebuild your order." A murmur went around the room. "With respect," Alliser said tightly, "we have heard such promises before. Kings who fancy themselves saviors when they are bored. When the next tourney comes, they forget." My father has seen things that will not let him forget, Rhaegar said quietly. So have I, but I am not here to convince you with words. I am here to listen. He stayed at the wall for 2 months. He dressed in black furs like the rest, his rubies tucked away. He ate their thin stews, took his watches on the windswept heights, listened to the creak and groan of the ice under stars that seemed closer than they ever had in the south. He rode with the rangers into the haunted forest, Dawn's pale sister at his side, a good northern blade gifted by Corgyle for the journey. Arthur came, of course, and 3 other seasoned men. They hunted wildlings and ghost stories. The forest was wrong. Rhaegar had no other word for it. It was not simply cold. It was old. The trees pressed in like watching things, their bare limbs clawing at the sky. Sound died strangely under the branches. Even the horses grew skittish, snorting at shadows. They found tracks of men. They found deer and elk and once the half-eaten carcass of a great white bear, its blood black on the snow. What had killed it left no prints. At night, around thin fires, the wildlings they had captured, ragged, frostbitten, hollow-eyed, spoke of their own flight. The dead walk, an old woman with 3 teeth croaked, her eyes bright with some terrible certainty. Not like my Eddard who fell from the ridge and lay stiff, no. These walk and do not breathe. The cold hangs off them. Their eyes are like the heart of winter. They come at night. They call the shadows. We thought the wall would keep us safe, silly, to think we would be safer nearer the old stories. Show us, Arthur said. Where? The old woman only laughed, a cracked sound. They move, Southron. They move like storm clouds. By the time you find where they were, they are somewhere else. They found a place where something had been. The snow there was wrong, frozen too hard, as if heat had met cold and both had died in the collision. Trees stood encased in thin shells of rime. A few blackened patches suggested a fire that had not burned long. The remains of 3 men lay scattered, their flesh stripped not by teeth. It was too clean, but by something else. Something that left the bones shining. Rhaegar knelt in the brittle snow. He touched a femur. The world went white. For a heartbeat, he stood in the same clearing, but it was not empty. Tall, pale shapes moved through the trees, silent as falling snow. Their armor was like frost, their blades thinner than glass. Where they passed, the air shimmered. One turned its head, and Rhaegar saw its eyes blue, burning, endless cold. It looked at him. He jerked back as if struck. Arthur's hand was on his shoulder, grounding. Rhaegar, his friend said. What is it? Rhaegar's breath plumed fast. We must go back, he said. We must tell them. My father was right. He wrote the first Raven letter that night in the Lord Commander's tower, his hand shaking slightly as he described what he had felt, what he had seen. He did not try to make it poetic. He wrote like a man spelling out a wound. The reply came 2 weeks later, borne on black wings. My son, Aerys wrote, his hand surprisingly steady, the fire you feel is not madness. It is warning. Come home. We have much to do. By the time Rhaegar returned to King's Landing, the city had begun to change. New warehouses were being raised near the docks, their foundations sunk deep and solid. The narrow streets that climbed up to the Red Keep saw wagons laden with grain rumbling daily. Men swore at each other in a dozen accents as they hauled and stacked and hammered. On the river, carpenters worked on the framework of a great, ugly thing that Rhaegar did not at first recognize. Only when he saw the chains did understanding dawn. Another chain boom? He asked when he found his father in the solar, poring over maps. Aerys looked up, his face thinner, his eyes sharper. Protection, he said, for raids, for desperate men. If winter bites and pirates smell weakness, I would not have them stroll up the river as they please. Rhaegar smiled faintly. I see you have not forgotten the petty dangers in your zeal for the grand. I cannot afford to, Aerys said. He rose, gathering the scrolls. Your letter was not jest, Rhaegar said. We saw traces. We heard tales. I felt something. Something like what came in my dreams. He shuddered. The dead, father, or something very like. We cannot pretend the wall is merely a relic. We will not, Aerys said. I mean to call the lords. Rhaegar blinked. All of them, all who matter, Aerys said. The wardens, the great lords of the Reach, the Riverlands, Dorne, the Vale and Storm's End, even the Iron Islands, if Balon Greyjoy can be pried from his rock. His lips twisted. Let them come to King's Landing and hear what the wall has to say. Many will not believe, Rhaegar said. I do not require them all to believe, Aerys said. I require them to listen, and to see that I believe. Enough that I am willing to spend gold and blood on this. He met his son's eyes. I would have you speak as well. Your word will carry where mine does not. They will think you less touched. Rhaegar huffed a short laugh. They have not read my songs. Then hide the worst ones, Aerys said dryly. His expression sobered. I will also show them the eggs. Rhaegar's heart stuttered. You have found them? They were never lost, Aerys said. Simply displayed poorly. He led the way down through the winding passages to the treasury vaults. Armed guards stepped aside. Heavy doors groaned open. In a small chamber lit by torches, on a pedestal of black oak, 3 stones lay on red velvet. They were bigger than Rhaegar remembered. One deep black, shot through with red. Another a pale cream, speckled with gold. The third a dark green, its scales so dull they barely reflected the torchlight. He stepped closer, his breath shallow. They feel dead, he said. Cold. They sleep, Aerys said. He reached out, not quite touching the nearest shell. His burned fingers hovered a hair's breadth away. But I have heard them in my dreams. They are not gone. Rhaegar closed his eyes and stretched his senses. He thought of the warmth of dragonfire from the tales, the heat he had felt in his sword dreams, the cold he had touched beyond the wall. He imagined that heat pooling in the stones, sleeping. For a moment, nothing. Then, faint as a heartbeat under layers of ice, he felt it. A thrum, a pulse, tiny, stubborn ember. He opened his eyes. They remember. His father smiled, wild and bright. Yes, they do. How will you wake them? Rhaegar whispered. With care, Aerys said. With knowledge. Varys has already found me books and men who claim to know something of such matters. Half are charlatans. The other half are charlatans who know a bit of truth. I listen to them all, and I measure what they say against the voice in my dreams. It is a delicate business. And dangerous, Rhaegar said. And necessary, Aerys answered. If what stalks the north is what we think, we will need every weapon. Dragonfire may not be enough, but it will be better than none. Rhaegar reached out. He laid his bare palm gently on the shell of the green egg. It was cold, but somewhere within, something turned in its sleep. He thought of the dragon's 3 heads, of fire and sword and sacrifice. Father, he said quietly, not lifting his hand. In the old tales, Azor Ahai forged Lightbringer 3 times. On the 3rd, he drove the blade into his wife's heart. Only then did it burn. Yes, Aerys said softly. If such a price is asked, Rhaegar said. If the prophecy demands blood. We will find another way, Aerys said sharply. Prophecies are not orders. They are warnings. We are not slaves to some dead sorcerer's rhyme. I will not kill your mother because some half-remembered story says so. Rhaegar looked at him, surprise and a strange relief rolling through him. He had not realized until that moment how much he had feared that answer. That is not how the woman with your mother's face sounded, he said. In your dream. No, Aerys admitted. She spoke of sacrifice as if it were a given. Perhaps it is, but I will not walk blindly into the shape the old stories have carved. When the time comes, if it comes, we will choose our own sacrifice. And if there is none we can live with? Rhaegar asked. Then we will choose the one we can die with, Aerys said. His face was very calm. But we will not decide that now in a vault over sleeping stones. Rhaegar nodded. He let his hand rest on the egg a moment longer, then pulled it back. He imagined, for a heartbeat, a world where these eggs never woke, where he married some suitable lady, had children, played his harp at tourneys, watched his father slide into paranoia and fire, fled or fought in a rebellion sparked by his father's madness. A smaller story, perhaps a safer one. He had already stepped off that path. "Summon them," he said. "The lords. Let us tell them a new story." They came, not all at once, not all willingly, but when the raven bearing the royal seal arrived. When the king commands your presence to discuss matters of the utmost import concerning the safety of the realm and its future, few could refuse without grave insult. Eddard Stark came from Winterfell, quiet and gray-eyed, a young man grown too quickly by the duties his father had laid upon him. Robert Baratheon came from Storm's End, loud and charming and already thickening at the shoulder with a warrior's bulk. Jon Arryn came from the Aerys, tired but resolute. Mace Tyrell from the Reach, all courtesies and calculating smiles. Hoster Tully, old and pink-faced. Balon Greyjoy, sour as the sea. From Sunspear, Prince Doran sent his younger brother Oberyn and his sister Elia, the latter a dove among hawks. The court glittered with them for the better part of a month. Feasts, tourneys, whispered gossip. Speculation about what could be so dire as to bring them all together. Aerys watched them, unseen behind his screen of courtiers and flatteries. He saw the lines of potential fracture and alliance. The way Robert's laugh boomed across the hall and drew men in. The way Eddard hung back, watching, his stillness its own kind of gravity. The way Tywin's gaze weighed everyone and found most wanting. The way Varys drifted through like smoke, listening. He saw, too, how they looked at him. Once he had delighted in those looks. The awe, the fear, the resentment. He had played to them, letting his words drip honey or venom as his fancy took him. Now he cared less how they saw him than whether they would stand beside him when the snow came. He took their measure and he waited. When they had all arrived, and when the court was buzzing loudest with rumor, he called them to the throne room. The Iron Throne loomed over them, forged from the swords of vaporized enemies. Aerys sat upon it in full regalia, the crown heavy on his head. The hall was packed. Lords and ladies, courtiers and knights, guards in gold and white. Riella at his side, Rhaegar just below. Tywin on his right hand, Varys and Pycelle at his feet. The murmur rose to a whispering roar as the great lords filed in. They knelt, they rose, they watched. Aerys let the weight of their attention settle. He felt again, faintly, the presence coiled somewhere behind his breastbone, its heat a counterpoint to the hall's nervous chill. "My lords," he said. His voice carried effortlessly in the great space. "My ladies, you have traveled far. You have left your keeps and your duties to answer my call. For this I thank you." He paused, letting the odd note in his tone rustle through the crowd. "I have not summoned you for war," he went on. A murmur, "Though wars will come. I have not summoned you to settle some petty dispute over river rights or marriages. Though, Seven help me, we will no doubt speak of such things after. No. I have called you here because there is a darkness moving in the world that does not care for our banners, our grievances, our toys." Robert shifted, bored already. Eddard's gaze sharpened. Oberyn arched a brow. "Some of you will say I speak of fancies," Aerys said. "Of children's tales told by fires on winter nights. The long night, the others, the white shadows that walk. Some will say the king has been touched by his time in a cell. That fear gnawed his mind at Duskendale and left him tooth-marked. Perhaps you are right." He smiled, thin and humorless. "Perhaps you would prefer a king who struck down any who dared whisper such slanders with wildfire and sword, who blocked his ears to anything that did not flatter him." There was a stir. His gaze swept them all. "I have been that king," he said. "I will not be him again." Silence. "While I cowered in darkness," he said quietly, "I saw another darkness. Not of stone and filth, but of snow and death. I saw a wall crack. I saw a tide of pale things wash into our realm. I thought these dreams the ramblings of a frightened mind. But then my son went north, as you all know. He rode the wall. He rode beyond it. He saw things that told him my dreams were not mere ghosts. He gestured. Rieger stepped forward, the hall's light catching the rubies at his throat. He spoke of what he had seen, what he had felt. The frozen clearing, the cleaned bones, the outcast wildlings' tales. He spoke without embellishment, but the hall seemed to grow colder as he went on. When he fell silent, there was a long, shivering pause. Hoster Tully cleared his throat. "Your Grace," he said cautiously. "With all respect to the prince's courage and the wisdom of northern crones, we have heard such tales for generations. The wall has stood for 8,000 years. We have known harsh winters, yes, but nothing like the legends. Why should we fear them now, when they have not come in the lifetimes of our fathers or theirs?" "Because something is stirring," Aerys said. "Ask Lord Stark." Every eye turned to Eddard. The young warden of the north stiffened. "My maester has read to me the same tea." "Alesh," he said slowly. "In Winterfell we keep them closer. We have always taken them more seriously than the south. But even we do not expect dead men to rise." He hesitated. "And yet, years ago, a ranger brought us a wildling woman who would not sleep in our keep. She said the shadows under the wall whispered to her. She wept when she saw the weirwood in our godswood and said its dreams were troubled. I had not thought of that in years. Not until this summons." Murmurs rose. "Troubled trees and mad women," Balon Greyjoy sneered. "We are to build new walls and fill the night's watch with our sons because some old crone saw a shadow in her soup? You are to do as your king commands," Aerys said, steel darting through his tone. "But I would prefer you understood why." He rose. "My lords," he said, his voice ringing, "our realm has been at relative peace for almost 2 decades. We have bickered, yes, and raided. We have held tourneys and feasts and tournaments of words. We have grown fat and complacent. We have forgotten that the world beyond our maps does not care for our lines. I will not see this realm caught with its breeches down when true winter comes." A laugh, quickly muffled, somewhere in the back. "We will increase the strength of the Night's Watch," Aerys went on. "Not with your criminals and cast-offs, but with your best men. Each great house will send a tithe of its second and third sons. Each will contribute grain, steel, and coin. I will match what you give from the royal stores. We will restore the abandoned castles along the wall, man those we can, and keep riders at all times between them." "That is a great deal to ask," Mace Tyrell said, his smile stiff. "The Reach feeds half the realm. To send more grain north, when winter comes, is precisely why we must do it now," Aerys said. "Not when snow already lies thick. The lords of the Reach will store wisely. They always have. I will see that the burden is shared." "And what of our own folk?" Balon persisted. "If we send good men to the wall, we weaken ourselves. The Iron Islands. We'll have fewer sons to throw away on pointless reaving," Aerys cut in. "If the others come, their frost will not care how salt your hair is." Laughter, uneasy, rippled through the hall. Balon's face darkened. "Your Grace," Jon Arryn said, raising his voice above the commotion. "I do not dispute that caution is wise, but men are slow to hand over their sons for a war they cannot see. Is there nothing more tangible you can show them?" "Yes," Aerys said. "There is." He raised a hand. Servants stepped forward, bearing the pedestal. The eggs lay upon it, dull and unremarkable to most eyes. Just 3 strange, heavy stones. But the hall fell silent, as if a wind had blown through and snuffed every candle. "Once," Aerys said, "we had dragons. They made and unmade this realm. They carved our seat in fire. Then they died. Not all at once. Slowly. Fading. Our line dwindled with them. My grandsire tried to wake them and failed. He burned with them. We have been living in their ash ever since." His hand hovered above the black egg, close enough now that, even here, with so many eyes upon him, he could feel the faint thrum in its core. "The world grows colder," he said. We must grow hotter. I mean to wake these, not as toys or symbols, as weapons, as shields, as living fire against what comes. A hiss of indrawn breath swept the hall. You would tamper again with forces that nearly destroyed your grandsire, Pycelle stammered, his face pale. Your Grace, the Citadel has long cautioned. The Citadel cautions against anything that puts power outside its own hands, Aerys said. I will listen to maesters when they speak sense. I will not let them bind my hands in fear. The gods will not like it, Hoster Tully muttered. The gods did not build the wall, Aerys said. Men did. And something else. If they disapprove, they may send me clearer messages than half-mad septons and ravens' bones. He looked out at them all, at the kaleidoscope of expressions. Fear, anger, greed, hope, disbelief. I will fight this war with or without you, he said. I would prefer with. The dragon does not stand alone well, but it will stand alone if it must. Riella, at his side, touched his arm. Her eyes shone with something that might have been pride. Rhaegar stood like an unsheathed blade. In that moment, Aerys felt it, the world tipping. The choice laid before them like a gulf. On one side, denial couched in reason, in prudence. On the other, the terrifying leap into belief and action. Tywin rose. The rock stands with the crown, he said. His voice was level, with the weight of Casterly Rock behind it. Lannister steel and gold will go north as the king commands. Others followed, some grudging, some eager. Jon Arryn bowed his gray head. Mace Tyrell smiled and spoke of grain. Eddard Stark said simply, the North has been waiting for this. Balon, scowling, offered as little as he could without open defiance. It would have to do. Later, in the quiet of the solar, with the hall's echoes still ringing in his bones, Riella sat with her hands folded and looked at him. You have set the realm on a hard road, she said. Yes, Aerys said. You may die on it, she said. Yes, he said again. He looked at the eggs on the table between them. The black one seemed a fraction less dull. You are not the man I married, she said. I hope not, he said. She smiled, small and wry. I am not the girl you made cry in the September. He reached across the table. After a moment, she placed her hand in his. We will need another head of the dragon, he said softly. Rhaegar is one. I am another, but prophecy is a stubborn thing. It will want a third. She arched a brow. And will you go seeking one in every bed of the CI? Ty, as you once did. He winced. I deserve that. No, I would have one with you if you are willing to risk it again. If you are not, I will not ask it. I have asked enough of you. She looked down at their joined hands. I am afraid, she said. So am I, he admitted. She looked up, violet eyes clear. Then let us be afraid together, she said. Years moved like a river, fast and slow at once. The rebuilding of the Watch was not simple. Many lords dragged their heels, sending malcontents dressed up as dutiful sons. Others sent their best, half out of genuine belief, half because they could not afford to be seen as lagging. The royal coffers groaned under the strain of new granaries, new forges, new garrisons. Tywin grumbled and counted. Varys spied. Pycelle tutayed and wrote long, worried letters to the Citadel. The Citadel replied with longer, more worried letters, some of which smelt faintly of charred parchment, as if the glass candles had indeed burned too hot when they wrote. Aerys wore two crowns, one on his head and one behind his eyes. The one behind his eyes grew heavier. The eggs warmed. It was not a simple, dramatic awakening. No sudden crack of shell, no dragonling wriggling free. It was incremental. The black egg began to feel less like stone and more like something else when he touched it. The green one occasionally seemed to shiver in the corner of his sight. The cream and gold one hummed faintly when he and Rhaegar argued late into the night about strategy and song. They tried many things. Old Valyrian words chanted in hot rooms. Bonfires on Dragonstone's windswept cliffs. The eggs arranged in their heart. The blood of beasts spilled on altar rocks. Nothing frivolous. Nothing wanton. Every ritual was measured, considered, weighed. Once, a man who called himself a Red Priest of Lawler came from across the sea, drawn by rumor. He spoke of a Lord of Light, of Azor Ahai, of fire and shadow. He looked at Aerys as if trying to see something through soot. "You are a candle," he said. "Bright enough, but a candle. Azor Ahai will be a sun." "I am not interested in being your god," Aerys said. "Only in preventing your god's enemy from freezing us." "The great other," the priest hissed. "You have seen his work." "I have seen winter," Aerys said. "Put whatever name on it you like." The priest offered his own rituals, fire and sacrifice. Aerys listened. He declined politely when the man spoke of burning children. "No," he said, "we will find another way." "You risk the wrath of the Lord of Light," the man warned. "I risk my own wrath more," Aerys said. The priest left. Someone found his body days later, floating near the wreck of his ship. Aerys did not ask too closely whether Storm or Hand had done it. Riella quickened. It was not an easy pregnancy. None of hers were. But this time, Aerys did not pace outside her chambers railing at fate. He sat with her. He held her hand when the worst of the sickness came. He brushed her hair back from her damp brow and spoke to the life inside her, low and fierce. "You will not be sacrificed," he told the unseen babe. "You will not be a knife in some hero's hand. You will be your own fire." Rhaegar, now married to Elia of Dorne, a quiet, keen-eyed woman with a spine of steel, watched his father and mother with a strange, thoughtful expression. "You are trying to defy prophecy," he said once, as they walked the gardens in a rare, warm dusk. "Do you think it will let you?" "Prophecy does not think," Aerys said. "Men do. Prophecy is a mirror we hold up to ourselves, can show us our ugliest choices and our best. I have chosen once before to burn the wrong things. I will not again." "You speak as if you have already made your sacrifice," Rhaegar said. "Perhaps I have," Aerys said. "Or perhaps it waits. But if it comes, I mean to meet it with my eyes open." The babe came on a night of thunder. Lightning cracked over the city, white and violent. The seas were whipped into frenzy. The small folk muttered that the gods were speaking. The Septons said prayers, their voices drowned by the storm's roar. In the birthing bed, Riella screamed. Aerys held her hand until she nearly broke his fingers. He counted her breaths. He whispered nonsense, curses, prayers. He would have taken the pain from her if he could have. In that moment, he would have given anything. When the scream changed, raw and new and indignant, he felt his knees weaken. "Another prince, your grace," the maester said, sweat shining on his bald pate. "Healthy, strong." Aerys laughed and cried in the same breath. Riella leaned back, exhausted, tears leaking from the corners of her eyes. "A girl," she murmured. "I wanted a girl." "Next time," he said hoarsely, "we will have a dozen. We will fill the Red Keep with their wails." She smiled faintly. "You always did aim too high." The babe was small but fierce, his hair a silver down on his head, his eyes dark and solemn. "Aegon," Aerys said when asked the name. The choice came from somewhere deeper than thought. For the beginning and the end. Rhaegar stood beside Elia, their own infant daughter, Rhaenys, in her arms. He looked at his new brother with a complicated gaze. "The dragon has 3 heads," he said softly. "In time," Aerys said. He did not speak of the thought that had come to him as lightning split the sky, that if sacrifice were demanded, he would be damned before he offered one of these children. He had burned enough innocence in his mind. He would light himself first. The first true winter wind came 2 years later. It howled down from the north with a voice like a dying beast. It tore leaves from trees, sent ships scudding for harbor, rattled shutters. In the streets of King's Landing, the small folk pulled their threadbare cloaks tighter and uttered that the gods were finally making good on their promises. Ravens arrived from the wall on its heels. Not the neat, measured dispatches of Lord Commander Corgyle. not the occasional grim notes about wildlings or the movements of their still meager forces. These letters were shorter, sharper. The handwriting on some was not Corgyle's at all, but that of his stewards or his maester, scrawled as if in haste. Strange lights in the woods, rangers gone and no trace left. Cold that bit through flesh and did not leave bruises. One letter, ink blotched, talked of corpses that did not stay down in their shrouds. Aerys read them in growing silence. He sent back ravens. Hold, endure, we come. He rode north at the head of the largest royal host raised in a generation. It was not like the hosts of old, raised for conquest or crown scrabbles. This one was heavy with dour northern men, with black-cloaked brothers of the Watch marching in disciplined lines. Lannister crimson glinted beside stark gray, Tyrell green beside Baratheon black and gold. There were Dornish spears, Tully rivermen, Arryn knights in pale blue. Even iron-born ships, reluctantly pledged, cruised the coasts to keep raiders from exploiting the chaos. Rhaegar rode at his side. Behind them, banners snapped in the sharp wind, a forest of sigils. Before them, the road unspooled toward Winterfell and beyond. At the neck, Howland Reed's men guided them through bogs and hidden paths, speaking in low, uneasy tones of creatures that had been glimpsed in the mists. At Winterfell, Eddard Stark opened his gates without ceremony, his jaw tight. "I remember that wildling woman," he said to Aerys in the God's Wood under the red-leaved weirwood. "If I close my eyes, I can hear her voice." "The trees remember more," Aerys said, looking up at the carved face. The grooves of its eyes ran red with sap. "We should have listened to them sooner." Eddard gave him a strange look. "You have changed, your grace." "So they keep telling me," Aerys murmured. At the wall, the wind cut like knives. The men who manned it now were better fed, better armed, but still too few. Their eyes were older than their years. "We have seen them," Dennis Corgyle said simply, when they met in the shadow of the wall. "No doubts now, no tales only. They move in the woods. They test us. The dead do not rest easy. We have burned more bodies in the last month than in the last 10 years. Rhaegar felt that same prickle between his shoulder blades, the sense of being watched. "We ride out tomorrow," Aerys said. "We will not wait for them to gather at our gates." They met the others on a frozen field a day's ride beyond the wall. The sky was a white lid. The ground was iron-hard under the horses' hooves. Breath steamed in great clouds. Every sound seemed too loud. The clink of mail, the creak of leather, the soft jingle of harness. They advanced in ordered lines, the banner of the three-headed dragon at the fore, flanked by the dire wolf and the lion. Rhaegar rode beneath his own standard, its design new and strange. A silver harp wreathed in flame. Snow fell, soft and deceptive. The enemy appeared without fanfare. One moment, there was only the white expanse ahead. The next, shapes stood there, as if they had always been, and only now remembered to be seen. They were tall, taller than men, thinner than sanity. Their armor gleamed like hoarfrost. Their swords were long, narrow, and curiously translucent, catching the meager light and bending it. Their eyes burned the same blue Rhaegar had seen in his vision. Behind them, in ranks that seemed to multiply the longer he looked, the dead stood. Not the rotted corpses of graveyards, but men and women and beasts killed not long ago. Their flesh was pale, their movements stiff, their eyes empty. They stood like puppets waiting for a pull. One of the white figures stepped forward. The air around it crackled, the temperature dropping so suddenly that Rhaegar's breath came out in a gasp, the inside of his nose freezing. It raised its sword. A sound like cracking glass rolled over the field. The horses screamed. Some bolted. Men shouted, cursed, tried to control them. The disciplined lines wavered. "Hold!" Rhaegar shouted, his voice tearing at his throat. Beside him, Aerys did not speak. He lifted his hand. The black egg that had never left his person, not since it had begun to warm, seemed to pulse against his chest under his cloak. He felt its heat. Not enough yet, the presence whispered. This is not the fire that breaks them. I know, Aerys said between his teeth. I have always known. He had known since the tent at Duskendale. Since the first time he touched the egg and felt it not quite dead. Since the Red Priest's tale of Lightbringer, and the old Valyrian scrolls' mention of blood and fire in equal measure. He had hoped. He had searched for another way. He had tried to wake their fire with lesser sacrifices. A bull here, a condemned murderer there. The eggs had warmed, but they had not cracked. He had asked himself, in the dark, whom he might be willing to throw into that fire if the world required it. Tonight, the answer stood beside him, eyes burning, jaw set. Rhaegar's profile was clear against the white sky. The son he had wronged by neglect, then tried to mend. The prince who would be king. The one the songs might prefer. He could not bear the thought of losing him. The dragon must have 3 heads. The sword must be forged. He heard the cold laughter of the others as they advanced, slow and sure. He heard the trembling fear of his army, the shuffle of thousands of boots on frost. He smelled his own breath, shallow and fast. He saw, with a clarity that hurt, the wall cracking again. The white tide, the cities burning not because of his madness, but because of his cowardice. You will not burn your children, he had told himself. He had believed it. He still did. There are other ways to make a sword, the presence said quietly. No less sharp, no less costly. What will it take? Aerys whispered, his eyes not leaving the oncoming whiteness. You have always known, little dragon. Fire under the world. Fire in your blood. Fire in stone. They are not separate, only stubborn. He saw it then, as if a curtain had lifted. Not with his eyes, but with the part of him that had listened in the tent. The pattern laid out. The strands connecting him, the eggs, the wall, the line of his blood stretching back to Valyria and forward to what? If he failed? Sacrifice. The word no longer meant only the death of another. It meant giving up what he least wanted to relinquish. He wanted to live. He wanted to see his grandchildren. He wanted to hear Rhaegar's songs in a world not freezing. He wanted to sit in a garden with Riella and laugh over old foolishness. He could have none of that if the field before him became a grave. Rhaegar, he said. His son turned his head, eyes narrowing. Father, Aerys smiled, felt oddly light, like putting down something he had carried too long. Remember what I told you, he said. Prophecy is not a chain. It is a choice. Not now, Rhaegar said, baffled. We must, Aerys agreed. He dug his heels into his horse's flanks and rode forward alone. Father, Rhaegar shouted. The lines parted around him in a flurry of confusion. Men reached for his reins, for his cloak. He pulled away. The cold intensified as he approached the white figures. His breath came in great plumes. Frost formed in his hair. The leading other tilted its head. If that pale, inhuman face could express surprise, it seemed to. Aerys drew no sword. He slid from his horse. His legs almost buckled under the sudden weight of the cold, but he set his feet. He reached inside his cloak. The egg burned his fingers as he drew it out, its surface no longer dull but glowing faintly from within, like coal. He held it up. I am Aerys of House Targaryen, he said. His voice cracked in the frozen air. King of the Undulls, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, last of the true Dragon Lords. You are not welcome in my realm. The white figure made no move. Aerys stepped closer. He could feel it now, the line that connected him to the egg to the ground to some deep molten heart under the world. The angle of that connection could be changed. The presence in him unfurled. Not something separate now, but something that had always been part of his blood. You are the fire that does not consume, it murmured. If you choose. He thought of Summerhall, of bones blackened, of voices screaming, of a boy weeping into his mother's skirts. He thought of the years he had spent trying to prove he was not afraid of fire by burning anything that frightened him. He was still afraid. He stepped closer to the white figure until he could see the tiny cracks in its icy armor. I was a poor king, he said conversationally. "I was vain. I was cruel. I was wasteful. I wasted your time and mine, and that of everyone who bowed to me. I would rather not waste this last chance." He closed his hands around the egg. It split his skin. Fire licked his fingers. He smelled his own flesh burning. He did not let go. He thought of Riella's face, lined with worry and love, of Rhaegar's first steps, his harp, his stern young eyes, of baby Aegon's laugh, of Rhaenys playing with a kitten in the throne room, of the people in the streets of King's Landing who would never know his name except as something in the mouths of watchmen. He thought of Tywin's disapproving silence, of Varys' careful smile, of Pycelle's wheeze, of Stannis' grim jaw, of Oberyn's lazy grace, of Eddard's watchful gaze. He thought of the dragon's 3 heads. "I choose," he said. He pulled. Heat surged up his arms, into his chest, into his skull. It was not like being burned by wildfire, which he had seen and smelled. This was deeper, cleaner, peeled him apart like bark from a tree, stripping away fear, vanity, everything that was not the core of him. He screamed. He did not know if the sound left his mouth. The egg cracked. Light exploded, not red or yellow, but white gold, shot through with hints of every color, bright enough to pierce the frozen sky. It poured out of the broken shell and through him, using him as a conduit. He could feel the lines of the world under his feet, the wall, the stone, the deep veins of magma far below. He bridged them. For a heartbeat, he saw everything. He saw the wall from above, a thin line between darkness and darkness. He saw the White Army, its cold a stain that spread wherever it moved. He saw other fires, small and scattered, red priests in far cities, children's candles in cold huts, dragon dreams in other beds. He saw his own life as a thread, thin and shimmering, weaving clumsily through a tapestry too vast to grasp. Then the fire leapt. It burst from his chest like a sun being born. It roared across the field, a wave of white flame. It hit the white figures first. For a heartbeat, their blue eyes widened. Frost-armored limbs reached up as if to ward it off. Then they shattered, not into ice, but into powder, sparkling, ephemeral, blowing away on the sudden wind. The dead behind them crumpled. Their bones cracked, their flesh withered, not rotting but collapsing, turning to ash in an instant. Weapons fell from limp hands. The sound of thousands of bodies falling at once was like a sigh. The fire did not touch the men behind Aerys. It roared out in a wide arc, then upward, slamming into the low clouds. For a moment, the sky itself seemed to catch. The white lid burned, to brilliant blue. The snow stopped. Aerys felt himself unravel. He was too small a vessel for this much fire. He had always been. It burned him from the inside out, but in the burning he felt no pain, only release. The weight of crowns, of mistakes, of futures he would not see, dropped away. He saw, in the last flicker of self, Rhaegar's face turned toward him, eyes wide, mouth shouting a word he could not hear. He saw Rhaella in the Godswood, her hand on Aegon's head. He saw Tywin, somewhere far south, looking up from his counting with a sudden start as if feeling a tremor. He saw a dragon, not in the flesh, not yet, but in the shape the fire took as it leapt from the broken egg. Wings of light, a long arched neck, jaws spewing flame. It soared above the field, then dissipated, leaving only the imprint of its passage burned behind his eyes. He laughed, or perhaps he simply stopped being. When the light died, a great silence fell. Snow hissed as it melted, then came down again in a slow drift of steam. The ground where the white host had stood was bare, black earth exposed. The only bodies that remained were those of men of the realm, dead in the initial panic or from the cold before the fire had come. Of Aerys there was no sign, only a circle of blackened ground, a few scraps of scorched cloth, and the shattered halves of a dragon egg, their insides hollow and faintly warm. Rhaegar knelt in the circle, his knees in the damp earth. His hands shook as he reached for the shards. "Father," he whispered, felt wrong in his mouth, like a word without referent. The air still tingled. His hair stood on end. When he closed his eyes, he could feel, faintly, the echo of that fire humming under the ground, along the wall, retreating north in great currents, searing through veins of ice. A shadow fell over him. Dennis Corgyle stood there, his lined face stunned. They are gone, he said, voice rough. The others, I could feel them, like a weight. And then, I cannot feel them. He swallowed. He did that. Yes, Rieger said. Corgyle's throat worked. He was not the king we thought we wanted. No, Rieger said, a laugh catching in his chest and turning into a sob. He was not. He looked at the shards in his hand. They were no longer dead stone. Something had passed through them. Some door had been opened. He felt then a stir in the air. A wing beat. He raised his head. On the horizon, where the clouds had been burned thinner, something dark crossed the sky. For a moment his heart leapt, dragons, but no. A flock of ravens, perhaps, startled by the light. His mind was too eager. Yet when he turned his gaze south, toward a red keep he might never see quite the same way, he felt something else. 2 other eggs, hundreds of miles away, sitting on red velvet in a guarded vault, shivered, their shells spidered with hairline cracks. Riella felt it when the fire came. She stood on the balcony overlooking the city, Aegon in her arms. The winter wind bit, but she had never felt more awake. The city below was wrapped in a thin blanket of snow that made even its squalor seem briefly clean. When the sky to the north lit, she stumbled. It was not like lightning. Lightning came and went in jagged lines, furious and brief. This light swelled, held, spread. It painted the stones of the red keep in gold and white. Her breath caught. Aegon squirmed, then laughed, reaching out pudgy hands toward the glow. Riella fell to her knees, clutching him. No, she whispered. She did not know why tears came, only that somewhere, something in her had recognized a door closing. Your Grace, a maid cried behind her. The sky. Bring me Rhaenys, Riella said, her voice firm despite the wetness on her cheeks. And Elia, and the maester, and... She took a breath. And Lord Tywin, if he is within the city. They came in a flurry of fear and curiosity. Tywin stood in the doorway, his face carved from stone. He watched the north, eyes narrowed. That is no storm, he said. No, Riella said. When the light faded, a hush fell over the city. Then the noise rose, shouts, screams, prayers. The bells of the great September clanged wildly. Riella stood, Aegon's weight solid in her arms. She looked at Tywin. He is gone, she said. Tywin's jaw tightened. We do not know that. We do, she said. It was not a question. He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they had not softened, but something had cracked behind them. The realm will need a king, he said. It has one, Riella said. She looked down at Aegon, then at Rhaenys toddling toward her with arms outstretched, Elia hovering behind. And a prince, Tywin said. His gaze shifted to Rieger's absence. And a hand, Riella said quietly. If you are willing to serve a king who burned himself to save men you have never met. Tywin flinched as if struck. He glanced once more north. I served a vain, frivolous king for 20 years because the realm needed order, he said. I can serve a dead one all the more. She inclined her head. Then let us begin, she said. Years later, minstrels would argue over who had been the true prince that was promised. Some would sing of Rieger, who rode north into the cold and returned with fire in his eyes, who ruled with a harp in one hand and a sword in the other, whose children bore dragons on their banners. Others would sing of Aegon, born the night the sky cracked, whose bloodlines united fire and desert and snow. A few, quieter, more inclined to darker verses, would say the promise had been fulfilled by a mad king who died on a nameless field, burning himself to ash to wake something old and terrible. The truth, as truths often did, lay tangled between. In the ruins of that frozen battlefield, grass grew aga. In strange and hardy, On Dragonstone, two shells split, spilling creatures into the world that had not walked it in a century. They grew fast. They were wild. They were not as large as the beasts of old Valyria, but their wings beat hot air into cold skies. In the north, the wall stood. It would crack again someday. All made things did, but not that day. That day, the cold broke on a fire that had finally learned what it was for.